we will study about Jainism. So Jainism is another new religion which emerged due to the new way of thinking. Okay, so in Jainism there is a lineage of Tirthankaras or spiritual gurus. So Tirthankara means spiritual guru who will guide us to follow the path of righteousness. Okay, so the first Tirthankara of Jainism was Rishabhanatha. Okay, and the 23rd Tirthankara was Parshvanatha, and 24th Tirthankara was Vardhamana Mahavira. So Mahavira was also a Kshatriya prince like Siddhartha. Okay, so he was a prince of Lichavis, which was a part of Vajji Sangha. So we got to know about the Vajji Sangha in chapter 5. So Lichavi was a part of Vajji Sangha. So Mahavira was a prince of the Lichavis. So he left his home at the age of 30 years. So he left all the comforts of the palace and lived in a forest for 12 years in meditation. So he led a lonely and hard life during those 12 years. He attained enlightenment after 12 years. Okay, so after attaining enlightenment, he started to travel from place to place on foot and preached people about the truth of life. That is 2500 years ago, Mahavira started to spread his message. Okay, so let us know what were the beliefs and teachings of Mahavira. So Mahavira believed that if one has to gain knowledge or know about the truth of life, he had to leave his home and forsake all the worldly pleasures. Okay, and they must strictly follow the rule of ahimsa, that is non-violence. They had to strictly follow the rule of ahimsa. Okay, so in Jainism, people cover their mouths with a cloth so that our hot breath doesn't kill any small insect. So that is how strictly they follow the policy of non-violence. Okay, and to attain enlightenment, Mahavira had to conquer all his senses. He had to control and conquer all his senses in order to attain enlightenment. Okay, so he was called Jinnah. Mahavira was called Jinnah because the meaning of Jinnah is conqueror. He had already conquered over his senses. That is why he was called a Jinnah. So the word Jaina comes from the word Jinnah. And the followers of Mahavira are called Jaina or Jains. Okay, so these Jains had to live a simple life. They had to leave their home and they had to live a simple life, and another rule which had to be strictly followed was honesty. And they also had to take a vow for celibacy. Okay, and So they had to live a simple life and they had to beg for food, and they were asked to be completely honest and not to steal and to maintain celibacy. Okay, so some of the followers found it difficult to follow all these strict rules. Okay, so most of the followers were traders, and farmers found it difficult to follow these rules, because when growing crops, he had to kill some insects in order to protect the crops. So he had to harm those insects. So he found the principle of ahimsa difficult to follow. So that is why most of the Mahavira followers were traders, and as they were traders, they had to uh, travel from one place to another place. So the teachings of Mahavira were spread in the northern parts of India, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. Okay, and all the teachings or the preachings of Mahavira was in the language of Prakrit. So Prakrit was the language which people were able to understand easily, because it was the language spoken by the common people. And the language Prakrit was given names according to the regions in which they were spoken. So the Prakrit language, which was spoken in the Magadha region, was called Magadhi. Okay, so even in Hindi, like that, we can find many versions. Okay, so like that, Mahavira preached in the language which was understood easily by common people. Okay, so all these uh, preachings were transmitted orally. So all the teachings of Mahavira was transmitted orally for centuries. Okay, later, so the written form which we can presently get, that was written in that was written or found in the place called Vallabhi, that is in Gujarat. That is 1500 years ago. They found it in the written form. They found the teachings of Mahavira in the written form 1500 years ago in a place called Vallabhi, which is in Gujarat. Okay, so he was the 24th Tirthankara. So Vardhamana Mahavira was the 24th Tirthankara in the lineage of Jain gurus. Okay, so this is all about Jainism. So next we will learn about the Sangha, where all these followers used to live. Let us know about the Sangha and the life of the followers in the Sangha. Okay, so Sangha is an organization. Okay, so the people who wanted to find the true meaning of life had to leave their home and join the Sangha. Okay, so to join the Sangha, men were able to freely join the Sangha without any permissions. But women had to take permissions from their husband, and children from their parents, slaves from their masters, and the servants of kings had to take the permission from their king and join the Sangha. Okay, so some rules were set for the Buddhist Sangha, so that rules can be found in a book called Vinaya Pitaka. So a Buddhist text named Tripitakas. Okay, so Vinaya Pitaka is a part of the text Tripitakas. Okay, so same way the book for Jains was Agama Sutras. Okay, so Vinaya Pitaka was a book in which rules were laid down which had to be followed by the Buddhist Sangha. Okay, so how was the life in Sangha? So in Sangha they had to lead a simple life. So they had to beg for food in fixed hours, and most of the time they spent in meditation. Okay, and these people in the Sangha, or the people who led the simple life begging for food and most of the time who had to meditate, were called bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Okay, so and we know that all the teachings of Buddha and Mahavira was in the language of Prakrit. Everyone was easily able to understand. So that is uh, people from every varna were easily able to understand the teachings of Buddha and Mahavira, or the people who used to live in the Sangha. Okay, so Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, slaves, merchants, laborers, everyone were equally accepted in the Sangha. Okay, and in the Sangha, they used to, the followers in the Sangha used to compose poems about the life of Sangha. Okay, so this is all about the Sangha, the organization of the people who left home in order to gain true knowledge or the truth of life. Okay, next we will study about the monasteries, how monasteries were built. So, as we know, monks and the bhikkhus, they used to travel from one place to another place in order to teach people, right? So the only season in which they found difficulty to travel was during the rainy season. So they needed some shelters. Okay, so the temporary shelters during the rainy season was the natural caves and some gardens. Okay, but as time passed, okay, or as time went by, they the monks felt the need of permanent shelters. Okay, so these permanent shelters were built and donated by kings, merchants, or landlords. Okay, so these permanent shelters were called monasteries or viharas. Okay, so these viharas, the early viharas which were built, were by using wood and bricks, and some are even caves in the western parts of India. And the local people provided the monks food, medicine, and clothing. In return, they learned the teachings. So, or they uh, got to learn from the monks. Okay, and like this, in this way, Buddhism spread within and beyond the subcontinent. Okay, so this is all about the monastery. So a monastery is a permanent shelter for the monks, or the place where monks started to preach, okay, and live. Okay, so next we will study about the system of ashrams. we will know about the system of ashrams, which was introduced by the Brahmins. Okay, so this was introduced when Jainism and Buddhism started to flourish. Okay, so ashram means, the system of ashrams means the stages of life. Okay, so they have described the stages of life in this system. So there are 4 ashrams: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and samnyasa or sannyasa. So brahmacharya is the early stages of life where men had to study the Vedas and lead a simple life. So in the grihastha ashrama, they had to live as an householder and they had to lead a married life. Next is the vanaprastha. In the vanaprastha ashrama, they had to live in the forest and meditate. Next is the sannyasa. So they had to give up everything and become a sannyasi in this stage of life. So that is the last stage of life. Okay, so the system of ashrams was followed by Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So the system of ashrams provided men to spend some of their time in meditation. Okay, and women, we already know that women were not allowed to study the Vedas, but they had to follow the ashram which was followed by her husband. Okay, so this is all about the system of ashrams. So this was introduced by Brahmins. Okay, so here we are completing the chapter new questions and ideas. Okay, so we learned about Buddha. Okay, there we got to know about a place called Sarnath. Okay, so we will get to know more about Sarnath and the emperor who built it in the next chapter. Okay, thank you.